Did the 80s cartoon boom secretly bury some of its best sci-fi shows? Everyone remembers the toy giants, the mega franchises, and the loudest Saturday morning legends. But behind them were stranger, darker, and sometimes more ambitious cartoons that never got the same worship. Some had space cops, cyber warriors, alien schools, dinosaur armies, and post-apocalyptic heroes. Tonight, we're digging up 20 rare sci-fi action cartoons that deserved a much bigger legacy. Number 20, Pole Position, 1984. A cartoon about race cars should not feel like a spy thriller. But Pole Position quietly tried to smuggle secret agent sci-fi into Saturday morning television. Instead of just giving kids colorful cars and easy villains, the show followed siblings Dan and Tess Darrett, stunt drivers who used computerized vehicles to take on dangerous missions. Their cars were not ordinary machines either. They had artificial intelligence, hidden weapons, surveillance tools, and personalities of their own, making the series feel like a strange cousin of Knight Rider with more family adventure energy. What makes Pole Position interesting is how confidently it mixed genres before most cartoons cared about that kind of hybrid identity. It was racing, espionage, tech fantasy, and crime fighting all at once, but because it lacked the massive toy machine power of the bigger 80s franchises, it faded fast. That is the unfair part. Pole Position had the ingredients for a much bigger cult following, but it got left in the dust by louder machines. Number 19, Space Ace 1984. Before every cartoon wanted to feel like a video game, Space Ace was already built from one. Based on the Laserdisc arcade hit, this series carried the same wild, fast-moving sci-fi energy that made the game look so different from everything around it. The central hook was simple but addictive. Heroic Ace could be transformed back into his weaker teenage form, Dexter, while still trying to battle the villainous Commander Borf. That one idea gave the show a funny identity crisis every episode. Was he a fearless space hero or an awkward kid trapped inside a cosmic disaster? The animation style had a bright arcade-era charm, with alien planets, laser battles, strange creatures, and that slightly chaotic 80s belief that space adventure should never slow down. But Space Ace also suffered because it came from a game famous for visuals, not deep storytelling. Still, that is what makes it fascinating now. It was not perfect, but it was a neon artifact from the moment cartoons and arcade culture collided. Number 18, Galaxy High 1986. Galaxy High sounds like a joke until you realize how weirdly bold its idea actually was. Two Earth teenagers, Doyle and Amy, are sent to a high school in outer space, surrounded by alien classmates, bizarre customs, strange technology, and social rules that make ordinary teenage life feel almost normal. On the surface, it was lighter and more comedic than most sci-fi action cartoons, but underneath the jokes was a surprisingly sharp concept: high school as an alien planet, and alien planets as high school. The show used monsters, gadgets, space travel, and strange creatures to explore popularity, insecurity, ego, and fitting in. That made it different from the usual laser blasting formula. It was not trying to be the biggest robot war on television. It was trying to turn teenage awkwardness into cosmic chaos. Maybe that is why it stayed rare. It was too odd to become a toy giant and too clever to be remembered as simple action, but its weirdness is exactly why it still deserves attention. Number 17, Dinosaurs, 1987. A war between alien dinosaurs sounds like the kind of idea a kid would invent on a sugar rush, and somehow Dinosaurs turned that madness into a full cartoon universe. The series followed heroic dinosaur-like aliens from the planet Reptilon who came to Earth and teamed up with human teenagers against the evil Tyrannos. The show had everything 80s children loved: laser battles, secret bases, monster-sized heroes, colorful villains, and a concept so strange it almost dared you to laugh at it. But the clever part was how it treated the dinosaur warriors like sci-fi characters instead of simple prehistoric beasts. They had technology, politics, rival factions, and even the ability to dinovolve into more primitive forms. That made the show feel like a missing link between creature feature cartoons and space action shows. It never became a household name giant, partly because it arrived in a crowded era. But dinosaurs had a hook most cartoons would kill for. Alien dinosaurs fighting a secret war on Earth? That is pure 80s gold. Number 16. Dino Riders, 1988. Dino Riders was not subtle, and that is exactly why it was unforgettable. The premise threw futuristic warriors, mind control technology, laser weapons, and dinosaurs into one explosive toy box battlefield. The heroic Valorians travel through time and end up on prehistoric Earth, where they use telepathy to bond with dinosaurs. Their enemies, the ruthless Rulons, take a darker path, enslaving dinosaurs with control devices and turning them into living weapons. That contrast gave the show a surprisingly strong emotional engine. One side respected nature, the other side weaponized it. Visually, the cartoon was built for spectacle. Armored triceratops, missile-mounted tyrannosaurs, flying reptiles with battle gear, and sci-fi soldiers charging across a lost world. It was ridiculous in the best possible way. But because it was heavily tied to toys and arrived late in the 80s boom, it never got the long cultural runway it needed. Dino Riders deserved more than nostalgia scraps. It was one of the coolest "how did this even happen" concepts of the decade. Number 15. COPS, 1988. Some cartoons promised adventure. COPS promised crime in a future time. And that slogan alone made it feel sharper than the average Saturday morning show. Set in Empire City, the series followed a team of futuristic law enforcers battling Big Boss and his gang of criminals. What separated it from standard police cartoons was the cybernetic flavor. These were not ordinary officers walking the beat. They used high-tech weapons, robotic gear, specialized armor, and enhanced abilities to survive a city that looked like crime had upgraded itself. The show had a pulpy detective energy mixed with sci-fi gadget obsession, almost like a kid-safe version of cyberpunk before cyberpunk became a mainstream word for young viewers. It also had memorable character designs, with names and gimmicks that made every hero and villain instantly readable. Yet COPS never became as dominant as it should have. Maybe it was too late, maybe too crowded, maybe too tied to its toy line, but as a futuristic action concept, it still hits harder than people remember. Number 14. Visionaries, Knights of the Magical Light, 1987. Visionaries had one of the strangest hooks of any 80s action cartoon. What happens when advanced technology suddenly dies and the world is forced backward into magic? Set on the planet Prismos, the show begins after machines stop working, leaving powerful knights to survive in a ruined society where mysticism replaces science. That alone gave the series a moodier edge than many of its competitors. These were not just heroes with weapons. They had magical staffs and animal totems embedded in their armor, giving them spiritual powers and symbolic identities. The result was a fascinating collision of post-apocalyptic sci-fi, medieval fantasy, and superhero transformation. It felt like the 80s trying to process a fear many people still understand. What if civilization's technology failed overnight? The show looked bold, sounded mythic, and had a deeper world than its short run could fully explore. But it vanished quickly, becoming one of those series fans remember with a strange kind of loyalty. Visionaries was too unusual to be ordinary, and maybe too unusual to survive. Number 13. Inhumanoids, 1986. Not every 80s cartoon was bright, clean, and harmless. Inhumanoids felt like someone accidentally let a monster movie crawl into the toy aisle. The series followed EarthCore, a scientific response team battling ancient subterranean creatures like Metlar, Decompose, and Tendril. These villains were not cute alien troublemakers. They were grotesque, massive, and genuinely unsettling by children's television standards. That darker tone made Inhumanoids stand apart from the usual heroic team formula. It mixed geology, environmental danger, underground civilizations, body horror imagery, and military-style action into something that felt much riskier than its peers. The show's world suggested that the greatest threat was not coming from space, but from deep beneath our own feet, waiting to be disturbed. That idea gave it a creepy power most cartoons did not have. It never became a mainstream giant, probably because it was simply too strange and intense for some audiences. But that is exactly why it has survived as a cult memory. Inhumanoids was not just rare, it was almost too bold for Saturday morning. Number 12. Spiral Zone, 1987. Spiral Zone did not feel like a toy commercial first, it felt like a warning. The series imagined a world partly overtaken by a mysterious zone controlled by the villain Overlord, whose technology could enslave minds and corrupt entire regions. Against him stood the Zone Riders, armored soldiers fighting to reclaim infected territory and stop humanity from falling under total control. That premise was unusually grim for an 80s cartoon. Instead of simple good guys versus bad guys, Spiral Zone carried a dystopian atmosphere where the battlefield was not just physical, it was psychological. People could be turned, cities could be lost, and freedom itself felt fragile. The designs were militarized, the tone was tense, and the stakes were much darker than many viewers expected from weekday animation. Maybe that is why it never became a soft, nostalgic comfort show like others from the era. It was colder, stranger, and more serious. But for fans of darker sci-fi action, Spiral Zone remains one of the decade's most under-discussed experiments. Number 11. Defenders of the Earth, 1986. Defenders of the Earth was basically an old-school pulp reunion disguised as an 80s action cartoon. Instead of inventing a completely new team, it brought together legendary heroes like Flash Gordon, the Phantom, Mandrake the Magician, and Lothar to fight Ming the Merciless. That gave the show a strange identity. It was futuristic, but also deeply old-fashioned. It had spaceships, laser battles, mystical powers, jungle heroics, and supervillain melodrama all crashing into one shared universe. For young viewers, it was a colorful action team. For older fans, it was a revival of pulp adventure icons who had helped shape sci-fi and superhero storytelling long before the 80s. The show's real strength was its scale. It made the battle feel global, even cosmic, with multiple heroes bringing different traditions into one war. But it also arrived in an era dominated by fresher toy-driven brands, which made these classic characters seem slightly out of time. That is the irony. Defenders of the Earth was built on legends, but became a forgotten legend itself. Number 10. The Mighty Orbots, 1984. The Mighty Orbots looked like it came from a bigger future than most cartoons around it. The animation had a slick, anime-influenced energy, and the central idea was beautifully simple. A group of individual robots could combine into one enormous defender against intergalactic evil. The team served under the heroic Rob Simmons, battling the sinister computer intelligence Umbra and its forces across space. On paper, that might sound familiar, but the execution gave the show its own personality. The robot characters had distinct quirks, the action moved with unusual speed, and the cosmic settings made the series feel larger than its short run. What makes the Mighty Orbots so frustrating is how quickly it disappeared. It had the visual style, the mecha appeal, and the Saturday morning excitement to become a major name. But legal disputes and a crowded marketplace helped bury it before it could grow. That makes it one of the great what could have been cartoons of the 80s. The Mighty Orbots was not forgotten because it lacked quality. It was forgotten because it never got enough time. Number 9. Saber Rider and the Star Sheriffs, 1987. A Western frontier should not need laser cannons, giant robots, and alien invaders, but Saber Rider and the Star Sheriffs made that strange combination feel completely natural. The show took the dusty mythology of cowboys, marshals, outlaws, and frontier justice, then launched it into deep space. Instead of riding across ordinary deserts, the heroes protected distant planets and space colonies from the mysterious Outriders, a ghostly alien threat that could attack from another dimension. That gave the series a bigger sense of danger than a normal space adventure. The team had style too. Saber Rider, Fireball, Colt, and April Eagle each brought a different personality, from classic heroism to hotshot racing energy, and when things got serious, their massive robot ramrod turned the show into full mecha spectacle. What made it memorable was that it never felt like one genre. It was a space opera, a robot cartoon, a western, and a superhero team adventure all at once. Maybe that blend kept it from becoming mainstream royalty, but it also made it one of the decade's most flavorful sci-fi action oddities. Number 8. The Centurions, 1986. Some cartoons gave heroes weapons. The Centurions gave them entire battle systems from space. That one idea made the show feel bigger, sharper, and more tactical than many of its competitors. The heroes, Ace McCloud, Jake Rockwell, and Max Ray, wore powerful exo-frames that allowed them to connect with specialized weapon packages teleported from the orbiting station Sky Vault. One moment they could fight underwater, the next they could blast through the sky, charge across land, or face impossible machines built by the cyborg villain Doc Terror. The catchphrase "Power Extreme" became part of the show's identity, but the real appeal was the fantasy of instant transformation through technology. Every mission felt like a new configuration, a new battlefield, and a new problem that needed the right machine to solve it. It was very 80s but also strangely modern in its modular action concept. The Centurions should have been remembered as one of the great high-tech team cartoons of the decade. Instead, it became a cult favorite, respected by those who knew how cool its design truly was. Number 7. Bravestar, 1987. Bravestar was not just a cowboy cartoon with a sci-fi costume. It was a mythic space western with a surprising amount of heart. Set on the planet New Texas, the series followed Marshal Bravestar, a lawman who could call on animal powers: eyes of the hawk, ears of the wolf, strength of the bear, and speed of the puma. That hook gave him a superhero quality, but the world around him made the show feel unusual. New Texas had robot horses, alien miners, desert towns, futuristic weapons, and supernatural villains like Tex Hex, all wrapped inside a frontier setting that felt both old and new. The show also carried moral lessons more directly than many action cartoons, sometimes dealing with fear, greed, addiction, and responsibility in ways that felt serious for children's television. Its tragedy is that it arrived late, near the end of the big toy cartoon wave, and never reached the massive status it deserved. Still, Bravestar had atmosphere, identity, and emotional weight. It was a frontier legend hiding inside a sci-fi action show. Number 6. Silverhawks, 1986. A team of metal-winged space cops sounds ridiculous until Silverhawks starts moving. Then it becomes pure 80s magic. Built as a cosmic companion to the Thundercat style of heroic action, the series followed partly bionic heroes sent to police the distant Limbo Galaxy. Their enemy, Monstar, was one of the decade's great villain designs, a cosmic mob boss who transformed into a monstrous armored version of himself with the help of moonlight energy. That alone gave the show a dramatic, almost mythological flavor. The heroes were sleek, shiny, and strange, with bird-like armor, spaceflight, laser weapons, and a theme song that made the whole thing feel larger than life. But beneath the shiny surface, Silverhawks had a strong crime-fighting structure. It was not just random space battles, it was law versus organized chaos in a galaxy full of bizarre criminals. Maybe it never escaped the shadow of bigger sibling franchises, but its visual identity remains unforgettable. Silverhawks did not just want to be cool, it looked engineered to be cool. Number 5. The Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers, 1986. The Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers felt like it was made for viewers who wanted Saturday morning cartoons to grow up a little. The setup was classic space western: frontier planets, lawmen, outlaws, alien threats, and dangerous missions on the edge of civilization. But the execution had a cooler, more mature style than many cartoons of its era. The main team, Zachary Fox, Shane Gooseman, Nico, and Doc Hartford, were not just colorful heroes. They had cybernetic implants that amplified special abilities, giving each mission a tactical and emotional angle. Zach's story, involving his injured wife and his rebuilt body, gave the show a surprisingly serious backbone. The animation, music, and world-building also helped it stand apart. It had starships and shootouts, but also mystery, tragedy, and a sense that the galaxy was a dangerous place with real scars. That may be why fans remember it so passionately. It was not the loudest cartoon of the 80s, but it had one of the richest atmospheres. Galaxy Rangers deserved to be treated like a classic, not a footnote. Number 4. Ulysses 31, 1981. Ulysses 31 took one of the oldest adventure stories in history and threw it into the cold loneliness of deep space. That is what made it feel so different. Instead of simply adapting the Odyssey, the series reimagined Ulysses as a futuristic space captain, punished by the gods and forced to wander the universe, searching for the kingdom of Hades while trying to save his crew. The result was not just action, it was cosmic myth. The show had robots, starships, alien worlds, strange gods, and a haunting atmosphere that felt almost dreamlike. Many 80s cartoons were built around fast battles and simple victories, but Ulysses 31 carried a darker emotional weight. Its hero was not just fighting villains, he was trapped in a journey that felt cursed. That gave the series a mysterious power, especially for children who sensed that something deeper was happening beneath the lasers and spaceships. It was stylish, strange, and unusually ambitious. Ulysses 31 may not have dominated American cartoon memory, but creatively, it was one of the boldest sci-fi experiments of the decade. Number 3. Captain Harlock and the Queen of 1,000 Years, 1985. Some space cartoons wanted to sell toys. Captain Harlock and the Queen of 1,000 Years wanted to feel like a legend whispered across the stars. The American series combined material from Japanese anime connected to Captain Harlock and Queen Millennia, creating a strange, dramatic space opera about alien threats, doomed worlds, heroic rebellion, and the mysterious figure of a space pirate who refused to bow to authority. Harlock was not the usual smiling cartoon hero. He had a darker edge, lonely, defiant, almost ghost-like, with a pirate ship that felt more like a symbol than a vehicle. That made the show fascinating, even when the adaptation itself could feel uneven. It carried a cinematic mood that many American cartoons of the time simply did not attempt. There was melancholy in it, a sense that space was beautiful but dangerous, and that heroism might mean standing alone against impossible forces. That is why it remains important. Captain Harlock and the Queen of 1,000 Years was messy, mysterious, and unforgettable. It gave young viewers a taste of anime's bigger emotional universe. Number 2. Robotech, 1985. Robotech did something that many American cartoons were not ready to do. It asked kids to follow consequences. This was not just a show about cool transforming machines and space battles, although it had plenty of both. It was a sweeping saga built from Japanese anime, reshaped into an ambitious multi-generational story of war, romance, sacrifice, alien contact, and survival. The Macross portion alone gave viewers something unusually powerful for weekday animation. Characters changed, relationships developed, people died, and victories came with emotional cost. The mecha battles were thrilling, but the real shock was the seriousness underneath them. Robotech treated war like a story that reshaped entire civilizations, not just an excuse for explosions. That made it feel dangerous, mature, and addictive. For many viewers, it was their first exposure to serialized anime storytelling, where missing an episode actually mattered. It may not be rare in fan circles, but compared to the mainstream giants, it still feels under-discussed by casual 80s nostalgia. Robotech was not just another robot cartoon. It was a doorway into a different kind of animated storytelling. Number 1. Voltron, Defender of the Universe, 1984. The reason Voltron still towers over so many 80s cartoons is simple. It understood the power of ritual. 5 pilots, 5 robotic lions, 1 impossible enemy. Then the moment every child waited for. The lions combined, the blazing sword appeared, and the battle suddenly felt mythic. Voltron. Defender of the Universe was adapted from Japanese anime, but for American audiences, it became one of the defining gateways into giant robot storytelling. The series followed the fight against King Zarkon, Prince Lotor, and the monstrous Robeasts, giving viewers a clean but addictive structure of danger, teamwork, and transformation. What made it more than a gimmick was the emotional fantasy behind it. Separate heroes were strong, but together they became something legendary. That idea was simple enough for children and powerful enough to last for decades. Yes, it became famous, but not always respected for how important it was in shaping American love for anime-style action. Voltron belongs at number 1 because it did not just entertain viewers, it trained an entire generation to believe that animation could feel huge, heroic, and unforgettable. So which of these forgotten sci-fi cartoons deserved a real second life? The 80s were not just about the obvious giants, they were full of strange experiments, wild animation, and shows that dared to mix robots, space westerns, alien wars, and darker worlds. Some vanished too soon, but their ideas still feel alive, and maybe that is why fans never truly forgot them.